The chess world has been rocked in early 2014 by the death of two prominent grandmasters. First, early in the month, we heard of the passing of Vugar Gashimov, who died at a tragically early age. And then later, on the 25th of January, we also heard of the passing of Gyula, the famous Hungarian grandmaster, who died of a heart attack aged 62. So by means of a small commemoration to Sachs, my BCM game of the month for February 2014 is one of Sachs's best games, where he's white against Emil Hermansson, and this game comes from the European Club Cup, which was played in St Vincent in 2005. First, a little bit about Sachs. He was born in Budapest in 1951 and was fantastically talented as a young player. In fact, he became European Junior Champion in 1971. He got his International Master title in 72 and his Grandmaster title in 74. And I think you could say that the 70s and 80s represented the peak of Sachs's career, because in 87 he actually became a candidate. He was one of the world's best players at that time, albeit that he was eventually eliminated in 87 by Nigel Short. Overall, you could say that Sachs has been one of Hungary's finest ever players. So here against Hermansson, he opens with 1e4, and black plays the solid Caro-Kann defence. And Sachs plays a line, the advanced variation, coupled with h4, that tries to take the Caro-Kann player very much out of their comfort zone. It's clear that h4 is a very unusual move at this point, and it sets up specific ideas. Of course, this move rode a wave of popularity during the 1960s, when Tau was using this type of thing to try to bamboozle Botvinnik in their World Championship matches. So the first point to note, and it's a very trivial one in some ways, is that if black plays the careless e6, he actually manages to lose his light squared bishop. So that, if you like, is the trap that h4 sets up. But no black player who's any good is ever going to fall for that. So the way black deals with this problem is to move his own h-pawn, either to h6 or h5. It's actually worth noting at this point that if black does go h6 and white plays g4 and black plays the careless move bishop h7, then white has the interesting idea e6 in this position. That's very awkward for black, as if he takes bishop d3, already the light squares around the black king are very, very weak. So all in all, going back to h4, Hermansson plays a solid move here, h5. And we reach a position where you could say, I think, that both h-pawns are mutually weak. White continues with c4. Black plays e6. White goes knight c3. And now Hermansson plays pretty solid move, knight to e7. What black would like to do in this position is to be able to take on c4 and then to sink a knight in on d5. So I think you could say that knight e7 starts the ball rolling on that plan. If we just take away the colours for a moment, another way to do this is, after the capture on c4, black can reroute this knight from b8 to d7 to b6 and then again to d5. But of course this takes a little bit of time. So whatever white does, he should try and anticipate that plan. Well, Sachs continues with the sharp move, knight ge2. And I think you could say a way to try and intercept that plan that we've just described is to play bishop g5 in this position, to try and tie down the knight. Black refuses to be tied down, and I think the best move there is queen to b6. And this is going to lead to some interesting play, where actually black can take advantage of the bishop on g5 immediately by hitting at the bishop with f6. This move seems to mess up white's plans to destroy the centre and to, when white takes on f6, open the g file for black's pieces. So for instance, in this position after rook g8, I would say that black's got pretty good counterplay. This to me would be a variation which represents a good reason why white shouldn't go bishop g5 all the way back here after knight e7. So Sachs decides to play knight ge2. and black plays d takes c4 as advertised. Now that move doesn't come without its drawbacks, and one of the drawbacks is being highlighted after knight g3, bishop g6. White likes to use the e4 square in this position, and of course after d takes c4, you know, he can sink a knight into e4 whenever he likes. And the point is, once you get a knight on e4, the square d6 starts to look very tempting. White may occupy that square, or he may simply control it. The fact that he controls it restricts what black can do. So bishop g5 by white now is, again, a very sharp move, a very interesting move. Of course, white could take on c4 straight away. But I think if white takes on c4 in this position, black can free himself by going knight f5. And now white's got to think about his own d-pawn. So Sachs's move, I think, is better. He plays his bishop to g5 to tie down the knight. Well, most sensible for black in this position is to get out of the pin as quickly as possible. But with the knight tied down on e7, you know, he's not going to be able to do very much. So he's got a choice, Hermansson, between putting the queen on c7 or playing queen to b6. Now in the game, black played queen to c7. Let's take a little look at queen b6. I don't think white can allow black to take on b2, so probably queen d2 is the move. And then we simply get some interesting play here. After queen b4, black plays ambitiously to try and keep his pawn on c4 for as long as possible. White puts his knight in on e4, knight comes into d5, and now rook h3. Quite often in the French defence or the Caro-Kann defence, when white plays h4, this move rook h3 is a natural follow-up. And I quite like white's position here. He's got a good initiative. Black's adventure with the queen seems misplaced, and white's already threatening knight takes d5. I like white's position. So perhaps all these possibilities, going back to bishop g5, tempted Hermansson to play queen to c7. But of course, in this variation, white gets to take on c4 without tears. So black gets on with his plan of rerouting that knight to d5. And now white plays rook c1. Another move that throws a spanner in the works to a degree. Black feels slightly uncomfortable that his queen is on the same file as white's rook. Yes, I know there are pieces in the way, but if we think about a black knight coming to d5, white would be in a very good position to chop that knight off at some point, and then the queen is in the wrong place. So black played knight to f5. Alright, were there any choices? Well, yes, there were. Black could have played his knight to b6. I think then I quite like bishop d3, more or less forcing the exchange. Queen d7 maybe, and now castles. And after castles on the queen side, knight b5 sets black tremendous problems. This move also gives you an idea of the usefulness of rook c1. Going back to rook c1 again, black could castle on the queen side straight away. Castles knight b6. Perhaps a better way of playing for black, as this time bishop d3 is not possible. Bishop b3 though, queen d7, and now knight ge4. Again, pointing out how awkward the pin on the knight to e7 is. Obviously black can sack the exchange here by taking on d4, but I don't think he's got quite enough for it. The pieces are coming off. Black gets to play his knight to d5, a4. White has a good initiative here, and a preferable position. So you can see, going back, that black's got some problems here. And so Hermansson tries to clear the decks by offering the exchange of knights. White is happy to oblige, and now bishop to d3. The point of which is to secure the e4 square for a knight. Once those white square bishops come off, it's much more attractive for white just to stick a knight on e4 and watch black suffer. Well, now, if Hermansson had any idea about Sachs's reputation, he wouldn't have played his next move. f6. Very optimistic, over-optimistic, very dangerous. But I think black is getting really hung up about not being able to castle. Now, let's see if we can find some alternatives. I mean, black could try a move like bishop b4 here. just really getting ready to castle short. White would castle, and now black hoovers off the knight to avoid knight e4. White recaptures, black castles, white goes queen e2, g6. Well, this is not a nice position for black, but he might have been able to play it. I think the problem for black is that eventually white's going to get g4 in and try and get after his king. So castling on the king side is fraught with danger, really. Going back to queen takes d3, black could try queen to a5 here. Again, tying down the knight for the time being, hoping to buy a bit of time to get his king out of the centre. But after a3, what's he going to do? He's going to play bishop e7, or we go takes, takes, castles, and now the knight's coming to e4 anyway, with a preferable game for white. Once white gets that knight on e4, black is suffering a bit. But going back to the game, f6, well, this gives Sachs the opportunity to demonstrate his tremendous tactical ability. In comes the queen. Not really surprising. Hermansen is hoping to survive with his king on e7. No way, said Sachs, ripping open lines and now sacrificing a piece, castling on the king side. This is a very nice solution to the problems of the position, and the point is that when black takes on g5, white's going in with a really excellent move now. Knight to d5 check. Tremendous idea, forcing open lines and highlighting just how bad that move f6 really was. Well, of course, what's black to do? He's got to take that knight. Then comes rook fe1 check. Black's two extra pieces are completely useless. If he goes king d8, white marches in with rook e8 checkmate. And therefore, black's got to give back one of his pieces. But after rook takes e5 check, his king is already far too exposed to contemplate any sort of survival. So in the game, Hermansen played the horrible queen takes e5. If he goes king d7, it's very easy. We go queen e6 check, king d8, queen e8 checkmate. Back to the game, queen e5, de5, and now this is not really survivable. Rook and bishop for queen, but all of the black pieces are on the back rank. So strong are white's threats are, for instance, something like queen f6 or queen d6. Black moved his king. The pawn came forward. King d6, another clearance sacrifice, getting rid of the pawn, jettisoning the pawn, getting ready to move the rook in. The king must take, rook e1 check, queen f7 check. And in this position, Hermansen had had enough. So we mourn the loss of Gashimov and Sachs in January 2014. And I hope this game serves as some sort of memorial to Sachs's enormous talent. Thank you for viewing.